Good morning. It is 10 a.m., and I will call this meeting to order just as soon as we have a quorum on the dais. All right. Good morning, everyone. I am calling to order this regular meeting of the Public Safety and Justice Committee, also noticed as a special meeting of the Federal Affairs Task Force on, where are we? On Friday, September 12th at 10:01 a.m. Nancy, let's do a roll call, please.
Vice Chairperson Lee
Good morning, President.
and Chairperson Ellenberg.
I'm here as well, and welcome to everyone who is on the dais with us. Let's go to public comment. This is the portion of the agenda set aside for members of the public wishing to address this committee on matters not on today's agenda, but within the purview of the Public Safety and Justice Committee.
We have no requests to speak in chambers and one on Zoom.
All right, let's hear our single Zoom speaker, please.
Okay, our first speaker is Parent. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, I see that your microphone has unmuted. You may begin speaking.
I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see Jeff Rosen's website. He has a tagline on his website that says, "Safety and justice for all." And that's just, it's not true. There's not safety and justice for all. There's safety and justice for some, and there's safety and justice if Jeff Rosen feels like it. But really, he should change his tagline to "Every man for himself." Because that's really what's going on. Because after I told him, and I've told you guys a million times already, that after I told him that my kids were being sexually molested and some predator was assaulting me because I was trying to protect my children, he filed charges against me in such a way that it further incentivized more assaults against me, and it also covered up the sexual abuse of my children. And it's really a shame that this is going on in this county. I mean, he's really, he's creating a culture of fear, because this could happen to anybody in this county, that he allows this, somebody to, I mean, I'm going to eventually likely pass away from these assaults, because it's created a great bodily harm to me. And I mean, with these charges, he's practically, he's holding a gun to my head. That's what Jeff Rosen is doing. He's holding a gun to my head. And he's supposed to be one of the good guys. One of the good guys is incentivizing somebody to kill another person. I mean, if you guys don't think this is wrong, I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't know. But I've posted a lot of this information online. If you guys have a chance, please Google the search terms DA Jeff Rosen petition sex trafficking, and within the top 5 results, you should see something about how he's utilizing charges in a nefarious and, I believe, unlawful way. And I hope that we can make some sort of a change in this county and possibly remove him from office. I think that's the only way that we can have safety and justice in our community. Thank you so much for your time.
That was our final speaker.
With regard to the speaker's comments, I'll note that the county recognizes that the topic that the topic of childhood sexual abuse can be emotionally challenging and even triggering for some listeners. California law prohibits the disclosure of information related to an investigation of suspected child abuse and neglect. As a result, we're not authorized by law to speak to the specifics of any particular case or the results of an investigation in that case, including when allegations are made as part of public comment. California law requires child welfare departments to immediately cross-report physical and sexual abuse of children to law enforcement and the district attorney so that swift action can be taken when needed. The public can be assured that our county takes all allegations of child abuse and neglect seriously and takes appropriate action. That includes rapid and cross-agency responses to such allegations by the Department of Family and Children's Services, local law enforcement, the child advocacy, and the district attorney. I'll also note that the speaker will not have an opportunity to speak on the same topic again during this meeting. Thank you. We'll move to item 3, which is approval of the consent calendar. Vice Chair Lee, do you have any changes, or are you ready to make a motion?
Yes, motion to approve the consent as stated.
Happy to second that. Do we have speakers on the consent calendar?
We have no request to speak for item number 3.
All right. We have 3, I think, very fascinating and meaty items on our agenda today. I will note at the top of the meeting that we have a hard stop at 11:45. I don't want to give short shrift to any of the conversations today, but I will ask the presenters to bear in mind the slightly contracted time. And with that, we'll go to item 4, which is to receive a report from the Office of the County Executive relating to the jail facility transformation process. I will also note that I have been to the eye doctor this morning. My eyes are dilated. I can not see at all who is there. I suspect it's Consuelo, but please introduce yourselves.
Good morning,
that's right.
Chair Ellenberg and Supervisor Lee. Consuelo Hernandez, Deputy County Executive. I'm joined by my colleague Amanda Ayala with the Custody Health Services Department. The update that we have for you today is primarily focused on one component of the jail facility transformation process. As a background and reminder, this project was initiated in October. It includes 4 components. We are proposing to provide a lengthier update related to the full scope of the community engagement as part of your semi-annual report that will be coming to the full board in November. But today we wanted to share with you more of the details related to our contract with CGL. And this work is a little complicated, and we've actually learned a lot since the project initiated in May. And I will try to be brief, but thorough. So the technical assessment of our facilities that CGL is conducting, there are 2 components. One is to look at the actual facility in terms of its condition. So if you can imagine, during the hot summer, the CGL team visited 4 of our facilities. They were up on the roof. They were looking at the plumbing. They were thoroughly investigating the status of the buildings. That is very technical. It's not necessarily related to how the operations function, but more so what is the true condition of the building. That concluded at the end of July, and we expect a draft of that report to come out later this year. The second component, which is actually the more exciting and the more informative, from my opinion, is the operational assessment. And the operational assessment happens at every facility. We held our Elmwood facility operational assessment across 2 days. It was this Tuesday and Wednesday. The first day included about a 6-hour tour. And during the tour, there were representatives from the Facility and Fleets Department, Custody Health, the Custody Bureau, and the Sheriff's Office, Office of the County Executive, and we basically toured CGL. We had our first kickoff meeting. It was a 2-hour meeting to give them the full context of how we work together, that we are all aligned in our mission to provide dignified spaces for people to be held in, and also express the challenges that we face with an aging infrastructure that isn't really designed to address the current ways of holding people while they're in custody, including the complexities with the classifications of folks, the protective custody, if you will. It was a very thorough conversation and tour that looked at every facility and its limitations, and the limitations that that creates on being able to manage what I described as a more sprawled campus across 62 acres that doesn't really allow the synergies for services or the ability for us to truly leverage you need more staff because the property is bigger. The complexities of having to transport folks from Elmwood to main jail and to the court to their appointments or to a medical appointment. And so it was a really, that first day was very intense. And then the second day was followed by one-on-one meetings and interviews with key stakeholders that operate the facility, including the Office of the County Council. That same type of structured meeting will happen at Main Jail North and our 2 juvenile facilities. So that we hope to conclude by the end of October. And now I'm going to really confuse you because the CGL work also has an element of community and stakeholder engagement. That community and stakeholder engagement is different than the community engagement that we're going to talk about in November. This is one part of the contract with CGL is they really need to understand from the community that serves people in our custodial facilities, just as much as they need to hear from the sheriff's office, just as much as they need to hear from county council. And so they will also be conducting interviews with about 15 or 20 different stakeholder groups. And I just want to list them out to you so that I don't miss any. And some folks have already started to receive introduction emails with CGL. So it includes Office of the County Council, Custody Health Services, Facilities and Fleet, the District Attorney's Office, pretrial service representatives, the County Sheriff, as an individual, not as the department, the Juvenile Probation Department, the Probation Department, the Public Defender's Office, administrative staff from the municipal and superior courts, the county's Diversion and Reentry Services Department, the Office of Corrections and Law Enforcement Monitoring, the assistant sheriffs that manage the custody bureau, the captains and division commanders at each facility. We have a new sheriff's office staff, Alexa, who will also be interviewed one more time. And the department heads for each of the facilities through that lens of more of an operational perspective. We also have potentially identified other law enforcement partners, such as the San Jose Police Department. And then we have a kind of big category of community advocates and support groups that we're building that list out now. So that includes, for instance, people with lived experience. We have our there is a faith-based element, a group of folks that provide services. We have our service providers, and then we have a group of advocates in the community that we're identifying now that CGL will hold one-on-one meetings or group meetings with them. County staff will not be present in those interviews. The intent is to provide a safe space for people to share information. In terms of our timeline, we are on track. One of the attachments in your report shows that the goal of this is to complete the project by May 2026. At that point, we will have a set of recommendations to present to the board that will have been vetted and discussed. It will also include best practices. From there, then we would have a recommendation from next steps and timelines in terms of phasing a project. I know Supervisor Lee, you've asked, so what's next? What's the timeline? Can we hurry this up? And we, we're being very mindful that as we put our recommendations together, that we're also casting what that phasing plan would look like, with the idea that we would have some sense of a plan at the end of this technical assessment process. I will stop there. I know that I talk very fast. Very happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much for the update, Consuelo. I do have a few questions, but I'll look first to see if we have members of the public that want to weigh in.
We have no requests to speak on this item.
Okay. I want to just first make a quick note of appreciation about the engagement with Custody Health at every phase of this project. Their input at the assessment stage really is critical to inform whether our existing spaces allow for meaningful patient care. Their feedback, of course, will also inform the design of future patient treatment spaces. And certainly meeting the consent decree should be the baseline, but also really focusing on ensuring that we'll have space for rehabilitation, that the spaces in rehabilitation, remodel, or a new jail design are really conducive to fostering an environment that is truly therapeutic, to the greatest extent rehabilitative, and minimizing increased trauma. Thank you as well for sharing the list of stakeholder groups that will be part of this part of the project, and I understand the broader external one later. However, I note that there are people that come into the jails either to provide programs or to visit loved ones, and I think that their perspective is critical at this phase, because whether they are visiting, volunteering, or working in the facilities, I want to know how the design, the operations of our facilities right now support or impede the functions of their presence in the jail. Does that make sense, that we would want to talk to loved ones who come in to visit, the faith-based providers and volunteers?
Yes, Supervisor Ellenberg, that is correct. And the way that the process works, if you will, we've created categories of stakeholders. And so one broad category is community advocate / support group. That is how CGL defines that. And then what we're doing is redefining the category that better fits our community, and that will include visitors and the faith-based community that you mentioned.
Okay. Great. Then I don't need to add that to the motion if that's already in place.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I will turn to Vice Chair Lee and then look to members on the dais.
Yes, thank you, Chair, on this one. So first of all, thank you, Consuelo, for a very comprehensive report on the various different phases of this assessment and how many important pieces and stakeholders has been incorporated. So I just want to say thank you for that. So cutting to the chase as to the key milestone deliverables, we have currently a facility final report date expected sometime December 2025, right? And that the final completion would be May 26. So once that happens, what's the next step?
Thank you, Supervisor. So that that next step, maybe let me find a different way of saying it. The idea is that the conclusion of this project is the recommendation, right? So that there would be options. And I failed to mention that as part of your report, we wanted to acknowledge the referrals that you sent us, including looking at the opportunity to house youth that are adults in our adult custody system, segregating those folks. But Supervisor Young did request that we come back with a phased report, if you will. And so the idea is in May, you will know what our recommendation is in terms of a phased, right? It is not going to have the elements of like the design, but it will have the, we should demo this building or we should remodel this building. And then each one of those projects will have an independent timeline.
Okay, good. And I would love to hear actually from the sheriff too, since he's running the space, and if you have any questions and how we can move forward to make sure that all these different issues are being addressed.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And I will say on behalf of our office, people are actually excited and happy that we're actually moving forward. So at least there's that happening right now. I do think, even with the May deadline timeline for recommendations, we're still talking years away from actually probably breaking ground if that happens. So, we still have to deal with some of the infrastructure issues that we have. We've had a great opportunity just this past week showing multiple stakeholders, facilities. Monday we had Supervisor Arenas and her team there, so we were able to do a walkthrough. And again, it's just a great reminder for people to see really how dated it is, especially the Elmwood facility. In addition, we all know about the main jail, but you know, there's room for improvement, but then there's definitely, to what Consuelo said, you know, the span of Elmwood itself, the 62 acres, you know, that has some built-in problems for as far as ease and access and movement. So anyway, very much looking forward to the recommendations in May.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't necessarily think we should have to offer historical tour of the space, given how many old buildings there's. We don't have any issues regarding historical building preservation issues. Is there at all on this one? I really hope we don't.
Actually, there is.
Oh, shoot.
So it's.
So I'd ask.
Yeah, it's very, especially, well, I'll let Consuelo address it, because
Especially in our minimum camp area. So Supervisor, some of these buildings were constructed in the 1930s. We converted the space to become Elmwood Correctional Facility in the 60s. So I believe one or two buildings are technically considered a cultural resource for the state of California, but that'll be part of our, you know, our report back. The benefit is their location actually might not impede a recommendation to move forward. And there are also ways, you know, if we haven't, there are levels of it being determined historical. And if it, you know, if it's a contributing building, then you can make modifications and you can demo. So I would not rule out the opportunity to relocate the building to keep its integrity intact.
Certainly, thank you. So as we all know, old doesn't mean necessarily historical. I think I'm fairly old, but I'm not historical yet. I don't think so. It's one of those things that we got to be very careful. Obviously, we don't violate any of the historical preservation rules. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And thank you, Sheriff, for the input. And I'm glad that this movement is happening. Thank you. That's all I have, Sheriff.
Any other comments? Would you like to make a
Yes,
motion to
motion to
receive the
approve the
report?
report. Thank you.
Seconded. And seeing no lights, let's vote, please.
Vice Chairperson Lee
Aye.
and Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item 5 is to receive an annual report from the Office of the County Executive relating to restorative justice programs.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Casey Halkin, Deputy County Executive. I know we are a little short on time today, so I want to be mindful of that. The report that you have is a summary from many contributing departments, many who are represented here on the dais, and also we have some subject matter experts in the room. So we received updates from probation, the Office of Reentry Services, the Sheriff's Office, and their restorative program, County Council and their victim offender mediation program, the South County Youth Task Force and the District Attorney's Office, and also from the Public Defender that is tracking legislation related to restorative justice. So we have, we're ready to take questions if you'd like, and I'm happy to provide a brief summary, whatever in the interest of time.
Let's do a brief summary, please.
Great. So as you might recall, we did a study session last year on restorative justice, and we have many programs across several different criminal justice departments within the county, and also some what I would call tangentially criminal justice, so reentry, people who are doing supportive service. And what restorative justice really functions on is the accountability between the person who experienced the harm and the person who committed the harm in order to bring another level of healing. Traditionally in our community, restorative justice is usually done not in lieu of criminal engagement in terms of the criminal legal process, but alongside, and also to try and resolve some questions that may have to do with restitution, and also to determine specialized programs. For instance, if somebody spray paints a wall on a person's house, they may be ordered to go and clean it. So that way there's some kind of accountability that's directly intangible to the crime itself. We also have a very unique program, which is detailed in this report, in the Office of the County Council, that can provide mediation, particularly with our probation department and with juvenile offenders, to help juvenile offenders at an earlier stage in the process receive some education about how it impacted them, how the crime might have impacted the community, to agree with restitution processes, to develop a more holistic approach. So in general, restorative justice really aims to be a holistic approach to the more traditional criminal legal process. I think it's important to note, and I know this has been a conversation of great importance that we've had at several committees this week and last, but restorative justice in general is not a mandated service. So it's a service that our community has led on, has really leaned into because it's aligned with our values, but it is not necessarily required as a mandated service, though it is called out in the law and supported in the law. The reason why I mention that is because, as you are well aware, we are facing devastating cuts to county infrastructure, and we will be looking at all manner of programs and services that we provide to the community. But I did want to lift that up, as I know restorative justice is certainly deeply important to, I know, to our chair and to our vice chair as well, and really wanted to make sure that that was called out in the report so that we could have a robust discussion about any kind of priorities or information you wanted related to the funding. Currently, and it doesn't detail in this report, but generally speaking, restorative justice office grants, so private grants, state and federal grants, but then also through county general fund that support the staff that are largely implementing these restorative justice services and programs. So with that, I'm happy to take questions, and certainly as questions arise, we can invite some of our subject matter experts up who might have more specific information. I did want to note that we do have a robust update from our restorative services director, Dr. Holly Child, but she's unable to join us today. So if specific questions come up, we may need to respond back with a report at another time.
Thank you very much. Do we have public commenters?
We do not have any speakers for this item.
All right. Casey, thank you so much for the report, and to Dr. Child and everyone who is involved in this really great work that's being done to facilitate more meaningful justice and perhaps even some closure for survivors and perpetrators of crime. I really just have an abundance of appreciation, a couple of questions. The report states that the VOM mediators engaged 242 victims, offenders, and other parties who were referred by probation, and approximately 60 people participated in the mediations. Were any services or referrals provided to the 182 individuals who didn't participate?
So I'd probably have to get back to you with that information. I don't see any representatives from our VOM program, but in my conversation with Ruth, my understanding is that their engagement is meaningful. So I do believe that they provide additional resources to those who may not be willing to engage. One other important tenet of restorative justice is that you really want both parties deeply engaged. You want the person who committed the harm, the person who experienced the harm, and sometimes you don't always end up with equal participation, which can slow down the process or halt it for some members. But my understanding from Ruth is that they do quite a lot of engagement and additional support so that at some point, should people change their mind, they're welcomed back into the program.
Thank you so much. It would also just be interesting to hear why, I mean, I can imagine reasons why individuals on both sides may be hesitant to engage, but if there is data, if that's something you're tracking or she's tracking, it would be interesting
Kind of
to
particular
see.
barriers. Yeah, okay, understood, thank you.
Thank you. And I'm also aware that restorative justice programs rarely engage with victims of serious and violent crimes. I have read about instances where restorative justice has proven to be successful, specifically in supporting families that have survived interfamily violence. And I'm wondering if a victim of serious or violent crime were to indicate interest in a restorative justice program, could any of our current programs support them?
Yes, and I would defer to our subject matter experts and potentially to the district attorney as well, who might be aware of this. But I can share a personal example from when I was director of victim services, which is to say that we had a homicide where the mother of the victim who was killed expressed to the district attorney's office and to victim services that she was deeply interested in learning more about the person who committed the harm because he was a juvenile at the time. And we helped facilitate with the district attorney's office, with the victim services unit, and with the courts, a meeting between the victim's mother and the person who killed her son. And it was deeply meaningful, deeply touching. And it didn't impact the sentence, it didn't impact justice being served in a criminal legal sense. But I do think, based on the comments we received from the victim's mother and also from the young man, that it was deeply meaningful to them both. And my understanding, though it's been several years, is that they stayed in contact when he was in custody. And so to your point about more serious cases, we don't have a program right now specifically designed for it, though I think as it's been requested, and as needed, I think the various departments have been ready and willing to engage, because we recognize that there's healing that the criminal system simply cannot provide. And in that case, I think all the parties rallied together to provide, not just for the victim's mother, but also for the young man, some element of connection that gave meaning to them both.
And may also be a powerful tool to prevent recidivism, even if it's not impacting the current
Very
case.
much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Does anybody want to add, Acting Public Defender Silver?
I just want to, Casey, I want to thank you for sharing that story, and I'll just quickly share a slightly similar story in a capital homicide case that I was involved in, and it actually did impact sentencing, and I've shared, I think, with DA Rosen and others, my experience in that case of actually contacting multiple victims' families and requiring some preparatory training to even have that type of engagement. But it ultimately resulted, or I think helped, move the case towards resolution short of trial, because certainly the district attorney's office, in making a decision whether to move forward with a capital trial, is going to, I shouldn't speak for DA Rosen, but is certainly going to weigh the input of the victim's family. And you really can't imagine a case of more harm than a family in a capital homicide case, or multiple families. And what was very interesting to me was when we did come up to sentencing, all the families, or representatives of the families, appeared at the sentencing and made statements. And it's not that everyone had moved to a point of closure or acceptance. The two number one questions we found during that process was, does the individual who did the harm accept accountability, and was there an element of remorse? And those conversations, I think, really, in particular with one family, moved them to a point of forgiveness by the time we had gotten to sentencing. It was, I've said this before, it was probably the most powerful experience I've ever had as a criminal defense attorney. So I applaud both the question and this conversation about the opportunity, of course, when resources are available, of looking at the restorative justice in these more serious cases, because I think there's a tremendous, with the most harm, there's also the tremendous, or the most opportunity for healing.
District Attorney Rosen.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that certainly there's cases for which restorative justice is appropriate and where both parties are interested in it. That's a requirement. They tend to be cases that are less serious, frankly. And when it comes to intrafamily violence, domestic violence, child abuse, there was an idea in the 70s and 80s that families where the child was molested by one of the parents should go through a psychological process and the family should be reunited. That has been widely debunked. And the kind of idea to preserve a family structure kind of at all costs, frankly, is what led to some of the significant problems in Department of Family and Children's Services. So when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to child abuse, I don't know that restorative justice is something that is going to be helpful in that situation. Of course, I'm open to hearing about cases or examples perhaps from other jurisdictions where that was helpful, but it's something that I would be very cautious about given the problem of given the concern about violence and repeated sexual assaults.
Thank you for that insight. Other comments? Did I not go to you first?
No, yet. Yeah, it's okay.
Vice Chair Lee, my apologies.
No worries. No, absolutely. No, I just want to thank Dave Rosen for raising that fact, because obviously in order for the restorative justice work, the victim themselves has to be very much protected. I think that's a concern that I think you raised, is if the victim's not being protected, putting them back together has certainly got more potential harm moving forward. But I think, all in all, I think the idea that restorative justice is something that truly is working. So first of all, Casey, I want to say thank you so much for the report and everything that you're doing and the team. And I want to highlight that the South County Restorative Justice Diversion Program update clearly shows that those dialogue-driven accountability works. With 87% graduation rate, 92% of graduates offense-free after a year, and major gains in the youth-parent communication. These restorative circles shows that simply talking and repairing harm measurably strengthens our safety. So in the shadows of the school shootings and on campus and whatnot, we really should scale programs like these, especially also for our youth, to build the belonging, de-escalation, and early support across every campus. So thank you very much for the report.
Yeah, I just want to, I do think the examples that we have from the South County Youth Task Force are particularly encouraging. And, you know, there's a real opportunity in South County because of the nature of the demographics in the community to do really innovative pilots. And I think the South County Youth Task Force has been particularly innovative. We do have, if you have specific questions, we have representatives there. But if not, I just wanted to take a moment really also to highlight their work, because it is very impressive and very encouraging and hopeful.
Thank you. That's it.
Do you have something
That's all
else?
I have.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for calling out the South County Restorative Justice Division. Very much appreciated that, that impact data. I'd like to move receipt of the report with two requests for off-agenda information to come back to us off-agenda. So again, in thanking South County Restorative Justice Division for sharing their impact data, I'd like an off-agenda report to come back with the recidivism impact data once that becomes available. And second, Casey, as you mentioned, recognizing the negative impact that H.R. 1 will have on funding for many critical county services, I'd like an off-agenda report to come back with information on the sources of funding that can be leveraged to maintain those programs. You did say federal grants, state grants. I'd like to know which of those federal grants may be impacted by H.R. 1. Are the state grants solid? What percentage of general funds are involved here, just to have a better layout so we can understand what precisely is at risk.
Thank you. We can
Both
do
of
that.
those requests are clear? Great, thank you. And would you like to second?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's vote.
Vice Chairperson Lee?
Aye.
And Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right. Our final item of substance is item 6, to receive a report from the Probation Department relating to juvenile custodial grievances for the period January 1, 2025 through June 30.
Hi, good morning. So I'm Jill Ugaldi, and I'm the Deputy Chief over institutions for the Probation Department. And I will defer to the team to announce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashanti Hayes. I am a Probation Division Manager at William James Ranch. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Li Wei Wei, Senior Research and Evaluation Specialist from Probation.
Good morning, Board. I'm Daniel Cortez, Institutions Manager for Juvenile Hall.
Good morning, Trina Gauthier, Probation Division Manager at Juvenile Hall.
Good morning, Frank Nessie, Division Manager for the James Ranch.
Welcome to all of you.
Thank you. So this morning, we do have a brief presentation. Ms. Liwei will go ahead and start the presentation for the board.
Hello, everyone. A little bit of context for this report. So at the June PSJC meeting, we have provided our first report on institutions' grievances that cover the data from July to December 2024. So this is our second report where we provide an update with data covering January 1st to June the 30th, 2025. And in response to some of the questions and suggestions we received from the previous meeting, we also include additional information in today's presentation to kind of address the grievance process as well as the demographics of the population. So 3 items on today's agenda. First of all, we'll go through the grievance process, and then we'll present the demographics of the population, and finally will be a summary of the grievances. So in terms of grievance process, we'll have our managers to walk through the flow chart that has been created to demonstrate the major stages of a formal grievance process.
When a youth arrives to either the Juvenile Hall or the James Ranch, they are provided instructions in a video form on how to submit a grievance. In addition, they are also provided a pamphlet or a handbook that has these instructions laid out for them. They also go through an orientation when they arrive to their housing unit or pod and go over these instructions once again. The youth have access to grievance forms freely open in every unit. When they feel that they need to submit a grievance, they can do that so directly to a supervisor, a staff member, or into a locked confidential box. They may request help to write this grievance at any time from either a staff member or a peer. To submit those grievances, they can submit it directly to that staff member, or they could put it in the box, which is checked once every shift or more. Once a supervisor receives the grievance, they review it, and they provide a response. So that response may include some information they need to collect. They may need to ask a staff member to respond. They may need to retrieve more information. They're given up to 3 days to provide this initial response to the youth. Once the response is provided, they go over it with the youth, and the youth has an opportunity to either agree or not. When the youth agrees, the grievance process concludes at that level. It then is submitted to a manager, which we just go over for the final review just to make sure the process was followed correctly. When the youth disagrees, that grievance gets then directed to a manager for review. Management will then provide another review and response to go over with the youth. That time frame is within 10 days. All health and safety issues are addressed immediately. The final resolution is given within 10 days. If, for whatever reason, additional time is needed, the youth shall be notified of this extension of the time frame.
Great, thank you. And also to accompany the flow chart, please also feel free to check out the appendices of this report, where we'll provide more details regarding the instructions that youth would receive regarding how to submit a grievance, as well as the actual grievance forms we administer at Juvenile Hall and James Ranch. The second item, we talk about the population profile. So for this data reporting period, in total, we have 28 unique youth who submitted either one or multiple grievances. By facility, we have 21 unique youth that submitted grievances at Juvenile Hall and 7 that submitted at James Ranch. In terms of youth gender, at Juvenile Hall, of those 21 youth, 7 were female and 14 were male. At James Ranch, 1 was female and 6 were male. In terms of age at grievance submission, at Juvenile Hall, majority of the youth were aged 16 to 17 at grievance submission, and for James Ranch, all the youth were under the age of 17. In terms of race and ethnicity, majority of the youth who submit one or multiple grievances were Latino. And the last section is a summary of the grievances received during this time frame. From January to June 2025, we received 72 grievances that were submitted at Juvenile Hall and 11 that were submitted at James Ranch. And if we look at the figure number 6, that's broken down by quarter, there is a jump in Q2 calendar year 2025. To explain, we have multiple youth who submitted quite a number of grievances at each facility. 8 youth at Juvenile Hall and 2 youth at James Ranch submitted multiple grievances. And more specifically, at Juvenile Hall, we had 1 youth who submitted 30 grievances that accounted for 72%, and another youth that submitted 16 grievances, which accounted for 22%. In terms of the conditions grieved among all these grievances, on the left-hand side, we provide a comprehensive list of grievances that our staff will select from to characterize the grievance. And on the right-hand side, figure 7 shows the top 2 to 3 conditions grieved by facility. So at Juvenile Hall, the top conditions grieved were felt mistreated, services, and staffing concerns. At James Ranch, the top 2 conditions grieved were felt mistreated and loss of privilege. And we have our managers to kind of elaborate on those top conditions grieved with more examples and details.
Good morning. So like Leeway said, the grievances for mistreated, if I can give you some examples, youth would feel like they didn't feel respected by the staff and the tone that they were spoken to. So staff would say, hey, it's time to start a new program, or let's get ready for school, or it's time to clean your room, and the youth didn't like the tone that the staff used in relation to that conversation. So the youth would file a grievance, and then the supervisor would deal with it and talk with the staff and talk with the youth. Out of the mistreated grievances, 14 were committed by 1 youth, submitted by 1 youth, and 4 by another youth. So 18 out of the 20 grievances were just submitted by 2 youth. For services, we had 13%, 9 grievances. 7 were submitted by the same 2 youth as well. And those grievances were more in relation to youth wanting to make a phone call at a certain time or talk to their therapist at a certain time, and the therapist wasn't available or their attorneys weren't available to speak. So the staff would say, oh, you can talk to them at a later time, or they would notify them to come and speak with them at a time. The youth would file a grievance saying, I didn't get to talk to my therapist at the time I wanted to talk to them. For staffing, 6 out of the 8 grievances for staffing were submitted by the same 2 youth, and it resulted in 11%. And those staffing grievances, it was really just the tone, as well as youth not wanting that staff in that unit working with them. Staff are responsible for doing tier checks and checks with the youth every 15 minutes if they're in their rooms. If the youth don't agree with that staff or like that staff, they always request, oh, I don't want that staff in the unit. But that's their position, that's their assigned unit. If they have a conflict with that staff, we try to work out mediation with them and the youth and the staff to talk. But the grievances submitted are really based on the youth not liking that staff working in that unit. And the other category was 6 out of 7 submitted by the same 2 youth, and it was really defined to a category we couldn't really put a category with. So what we did is, an example would be We had youth in custody that had restraining orders against each other, and they weren't supposed to be near each other. They were in custody at the same time. So what we did is we separated them by tiers, and we did the best we could until they went back to court, and the judge modified the restraining order. So we classified that under other. Thank you.
Thank you. On this very last slide, we present the data on the grievance resolution. So to kind of revisit the grievance process a little bit more, introduced earlier, when youth would receive an initial response from the supervisor, and if youth does not agree with the response, then it moves to the manager. So for grievances resolved at juvenile hall, we had 40 grievances, which is 57% that were resolved at the supervisor level, and 30, which is 43% that were resolved at the manager level. At James Ranch, 100%, which is 11 grievances, were resolved at the supervisor level. In terms of average number of days from grievance submission to initial response, at juvenile hall, that was 0 day. At James Ranch, was 5 days. In terms of average number of days from grievance submission to final resolution, it was 1 day at juvenile hall and 11 days at James Ranch. So kind of to explain why there were relatively larger number of days at James Ranch is because at James Ranch, a subset of the grievances addressed incidents that occurred during school. So as a result, the review and resolution of these grievances were put on hold until the school staff could return and directly address the grievance with the youth, which would cause a delay in this process. And in these circumstances, the supervisor would inform the youth about the delay. But after removing those cases, the average number of days from grievance submission to initial response at James Ranch will be 1 day, and then the average number of days from grievance submission to final resolution will be 2 days at James Ranch, which fall within the required number of days to resolve the grievance. For figure number 8 on the right, in terms of distribution of resolution by facility, again, at Juvenile Hall and James Ranch, there is a relatively similar trend where the majority would fall under unfounded or no change, which means there was not sufficient evidence or that no change was necessary. So in these circumstances, a couple of examples might be used personal items were initially found missing but were later found, or youth had privacy concerns, but then there was no sufficient evidence to prove this. And Julie, if you would like to provide more explanation on that, that'd be helpful.
So further explanation to the security is every 15 minutes, our staff performs security checks to make sure that that youth is safe within their room when they're in their room. And some of the youth don't like that because they feel like their privacy is being invaded by somebody looking in to check on them. Another example of when a grievance was filed was a youth that we needed to place on a one-on-one for their own safety per behavioral health. That individual felt very smothered by a staff being with them 24/7, so they also claimed that they had privacy violations as well. So just to put a little bit of context into those.
Thank you. So that pretty much concludes our presentation on the grievances report covering January to June 2025. On this very last slide, we also include a QR code to our dynamic dashboard developed by probation for our custody population to provide a broader picture of the population. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. Do we have any public commenters?
There are no requests to speak.
Thank you. I'm very impressed with the speed at which grievances are resolved. As your data showed, an average of 2 days at the ranch and 0 at the hall. We know that Title 15 requires, I think, a 10 to 15 day resolution time. To me, I see this as a measure of respect that the staff has for concerns of the youth in our custody, and just want to call that out and express gratitude for that. I want to focus a little bit on the 2 juveniles that submitted the greatest number of grievances, 30 and 16 respectively. What kind of additional supports beyond grievance resolutions are provided to these youth? I'm wondering if perhaps the grievance process is being used as a call for attention that would warrant more holistic assessments.
Yeah, that's actually a really good assessment. So what me and my colleague do, Trina, is we actually, a lot of the times the youth just want to feel heard. or they feel that they're a way for them to talk to the management, I'll file a grievance. So what we do is, even though we review ones that are unfounded or aren't violation of rights, we actually go up to the units and follow up with the youth just to check in with them to say, hey, we got your grievance and we wanted to talk to you about it and see with those situations specifically, we talked to those youth numerous times about how they felt, if they needed extra support, if we needed to call a community-based organization to help provide support, to review kind of their in-custody case plans to see what other supports that they could receive. A lot of times it was just them wanting to talk with us and let them know their point of view and be heard about how they felt at the time. And then they would say, I don't really mind the staff, actually. I just wanted to talk to you about this or want to talk to you about that. So that was the case a lot of times.
So that would seem to me to be a pretty clear indication that there is something that they are not getting if they need to resort to the grievance process to have a conversation. So in those cases, obviously de-identified, can you share some of the response or follow-up and if it's had an impact?
Sure. So yeah, we would follow up with them and find out, like, hey, what their issues were, what grievances they were submitting. In regards to the other and like their spacing, I'll use the example of the restraining order as a good example. We made sure that we felt and listened to their concerns and made staff aware to keep them separated as much as possible. They still have to go to school, they have to attend programs and things like that. So we just had those conversations with them, and then once we had the conversations, they were happy with the resolution, understanding what steps and measures we were taking to keep them safe and to make sure that they were heard. Other situations where we would just meet with the youth and talk with them and offer them support. Maybe a lot of times they were saying, hey, I wanted to talk to the college liaison, but they weren't available at the time, and then so I had to file a grievance or things like that. So even though it might have been educational related or something like that, they felt like they wanted to talk to the manager. And so what we advise the youth to do is they have white slips that they can talk to their attorneys, their probation officer, or any of the managers or supervisors. If they fill one of those out, they don't have to go through the grievance process. They also can just let the unit supervisor know, and then the supervisor would let us know if they needed to talk with us and it wasn't a rights violation or a Title 15 violation.
Mm-hmm.
If I could add to that, I would like to add additional information in regards to the referral process. So when we do have a youth and they're engaged in maybe some high-level mental health issues where they do need to be heard at a different level, we would then submit referrals to behavioral health and have them work with them either in a group setting, one-on-one setting, or whatever they believe to be appropriate. We would also reach out to the school. It may be that they can offer additional supports, as Dan was talking about, for maybe college classes, or get them more engaged in services to keep them busier throughout the day so they're not dwelling on some of these issues that they believe they have feelings and need to be heard by other venues. In addition, our staff are very acutely aware of the youth that have higher needs. So those referrals are submitted on behalf of the youth regularly. If we can bring in mentors, if we can bring in anybody that can interact with the youth that can allow them to share their feelings and have that one-on-one interaction, we do.
Thank you both for the responses. There's a statement in the report that says youth may not engage with staff in explaining how they should be directed and choose to submit a grievance stating they feel mistreated. I'm certain there was no intentional negative connotation in this statement, but I did feel that the language sort of fails to reflect on the inherent power imbalance that exists in a custodial facility and even outside of such a setting. It is understandable that a youth may not feel safe approaching an adult to provide feedback on that adult's behavior. So I don't want the youth to feel at fault if they can't do it directly and have to submit a grievance. And if your sense is that the grievance process isn't the right tool or outlet for a youth to provide that type of feedback, is there some alternative outlet that should be provided or that you would recommend?
So what I hear the question to be is the confidentiality piece. If the youth aren't feeling comfortable going to the staff member and stating what their concerns are, what other avenues are there?
I don't think it's confidentiality as much as power imbalance, and that expecting a youth to approach an adult in a position of authority over them and provide feedback is a tall order. So that could be addressed through grievance. Is there, if you don't want that to be a grievance, because the wording of the statement indicated to me that there's a preference that the youth speak directly, and that if they can't do that, then to file a grievance. Understanding how challenging it may be, is the grievance the best plan B, or are there other opportunities if you think that shouldn't go through the grievance process?
There are other opportunities. The youth have a behavioral health specialist that work with them regularly, that if they had a concern, they can confide in them. And at that point, the behavioral health can then address it with the staff members and or supervisors and or managers. We also have a lot of CBOs that come into the facility very, very regularly and speak with the youth. They provide mentorship services and all kinds of other services. So if someone did feel uncomfortable with that kind of power and control setup, that they could speak to those individuals as well as a parent. So they have regular visits with their parents, and the parent may call and voice some concern about maybe that their youth wasn't able to do a certain thing or have a certain privilege, and that they were concerned about it. So there's many different venues in which the information can get back to us, but we're hoping and we're confident that we build that confidence within the youth, and we have that type of relationship with the youth, especially working with them every day and having consistent staffing, that they do in fact feel comfortable in going to staff when they have a concern.
That certainly would be the ideal. Thank you. I don't have additional questions. Vice Chair Lee, do you have questions on this item?
Yes, first I just want to thank the staff for this very comprehensive report. I appreciate the effort being provided to provide the definitions and the visuals for the processes, which is helpful, and hope that this continues. I want to thank for the working with our staff to get those questions answered ahead of this meeting, and I think it's a good start for these reports, and looking forward to see them continue to improve and improving for our youth. One thing I do want to double check on is regarding the specific, look at the number, like looking at the chart itself, like, oh my God, that's bad. But then of course, it only came from 2 people, of 46 of them, minus those 46, the number is actually dropping. So in that sense, I think that there's 2 ways to look at this. So the flip side of this is that it feels like people are not feeling restrained or afraid of retaliation by filing the grievances. That's why they're filing so many of them. So I think, to me, in some sense, I can see that as potentially a good thing, number one. Number two is, as for those 2 individuals, there's obviously issues of privacy, but a couple of things I just want to mention. Are they both male? One male, one female, both females? Is there something I could even identify to let me know? Because if it's both females, and since the female number is so small, I wonder if there's indication of some other issues. That's why I'm asking the questions.
So the youth that have been identified as submitting the most grievances, we are working with them on a variety of different areas to try and allow them to be heard in different venues, so that perhaps those numbers will reflect that in the coming report.
Okay.
I will defer to research and development for the specifics in regards to those individuals and their gender.
Sure. Thank you.
So yeah, the 2 youths were both females, and we're also considering including some sex information by the number of grievances or the conditions grieved in the future report, as requested.
Thank you for stating that, because as we see, the number of female in our facilities are very, very small compared to male to start with. And the grievances, and again, I mean, we have different needs and issues, and if the facilities has addressed a lot of the needs for the male but not the female, I mean, that might potentially be an issue that I would like to make sure we are addressing them, number one. Number two is, on the chart regarding the resolving the finality. Some are being so-called unfounded, but of course there are those that are also has been, having corrective measures that's identified that those grievances are appropriately grieved. Is there a way I could tell what are those areas, like compared to felt mistreated services, staffing, how we lay those out in conditions? What are the conditions that has been adjudged corrective action needed? Is there a category? Because I don't see that breakdown.
Yeah, for this report, I don't think we have that detailed information yet about what those corrective measures pertain to in terms of the conditions grieved. But we may consider including if there is a trend in terms of corrective measures and which category to fall into in the future report.
Yeah, I mean, basically what I'm trying to find out is what are the things that we're not doing so well at, right? And that, I think, is a very important piece to understand the report instead of lumping everything together. So if you could break that down for us, I think it would be much more helpful. Of what's unfounded, what's found out, and so what we need to fix, basically. So those are the issues. So let me say, maybe in future reports, interesting findings about age and sex, right? When there's grievances, context of any temporary skew in the data, of addressing the privacy issues, and I don't know if length of stay of an individual actually have any impacts with grievance submissions. But most important, I think, is what I mentioned earlier regarding the type of grievances that's found to require corrective action, exactly what type they are, because those are things that clearly we're not doing as well, and how many of these unfounded grievances end up being resolved anyway. So that's also helpful. So is all that doable?
Yeah, we'll try our best.
All right.
So would you like to make your motion?
Yes, a motion to
include in future
those
reports?
future reports, to have those items being addressed. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll second that. Do we have any comments from anyone? Damon?
Just briefly, which is, I think, an additional avenue of obtaining information from the youth is the relationship with the attorneys. And oftentimes, while we're serving them in the process of their actual case, we do try and assess how they're doing, especially, obviously, our youth who are in custody. And it's been my experience, and I think the experience when I talk to our juvenile attorneys, that the Chief Bircher's team is incredibly responsive, which for me is very reassuring. And I can just say also, in general, I have found our juvenile probation office and under Chief Bircher's leadership really has continued a culture of transparency. Many of the faces I see presenting today have taken me on multiple tours of both of our facilities. They make themselves quite available to us when we want to engage at the facility, engage with the youth. So I appreciate at least being able to assess with our own eyes what we think is going on.
Thank you. All right. Do you anything else?
May I just?
Alternate
Yeah,
defender.
I just want to add to Damon's comments. I think, when we run an organization and a department, when we're leaders, these are just opportunities for feedback, constructive and helpful, to help guide and improve our operations. So I'm sure that as professionals that we are, we just take it in that tone and in that way. I also think that this is a good time to identify that these are sort of good problems to have compared to the type of problems that other institutions and other jurisdictions have. And I think that's an important contextual comment that we need to draw, because we've come a long way. Our juvenile probation department is really among the best in the state. And I think that we should be very proud of it. And I agree with Damon that the effective management, the great quality communication that we have with all of you is so incredibly important and valuable, and that you all take the time to speak to us as the advocates when we have concerns about the youth that we serve. So that is so incredibly important, and I want to thank you so profoundly for that, because we are all in this together to take care of these youth in the most important and constructive way. We know that some of them are incredibly challenging, especially now, because these are the youth that, you know, we have such responsibility for, and that it takes a village to raise them. And so I appreciate all of you for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's vote on this item.
Vice Chairperson
Aye.
Lee and Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 7 is an opportunity for any of the folks on either side of the dais to offer any announcements. I'll look for lights. Javier?
Thank you. We're 1 month and 5 days away from our Reentry Resource Center 5K fundraiser at Halyard County Park. So I'm encouraging as many folks to register for the race. You could walk, run on the day of, or virtually anywhere you so please. And those proceeds is going towards purchasing new clothing for folks that are coming out of jail and prison, and also healthy snacks. We're starting to see a lot of our clients waiting at the center longer for services. Of course, many of our clients are homeless and hungry, so we're looking at providing some healthy snacks for them. Thank you.
Great.
And the information can be found on our website.
District Attorney Rosen.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that we've promoted a new assistant district attorney. That's the attorneys that serve at the executive level. We've had a retirement. Angela Bernard is retiring. Today's her last day. And a couple days ago, I named as our new assistant district attorney to replace her, Paul Ginn. So you'll all be seeing more of Paul in the future, and I'm sure you'll enjoy working with him. And if you don't, let me know.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Item 8 was the consent calendar. Item 9 is the moment to adjourn and announce that the next regular meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, October 15th at 10 a.m. Thank you.